To Kill a Mockingbird, video 20. Well, I believe video 17, 18, and 19 were vocabulary review. And now what are we going to do? We're going to go back to video 16. Okay, I'm going to reread it. If I can convince you throughout this course is to reread parts and read again and read again. Okay, think about it. There was a person. This person was born in the United States. This person received a lot of input, you know, throughout her life, and then not only that, then she went to school. She learned a lot of vocabulary, and then she spent her whole life, you know, learning vocabulary, and then one day she decides to write a book. So she's going to use all of the language she has accumulated so far to write that book. But not only that, she's going to spend a lot of time, because she will write the book and then rewrite, adjust some passages, consult the dictionary, and then write again, and then rewrite again, you know. So this person will spend years trying to write that thing. And more than that, not only this person had all of that work, this person is one of the most intelligent, I don't know, people in her time, you know. So imagine, maybe there were thousands of people who did the same thing, went through the same effort, you know, and in the end, we are not going to think about those. We're going to forget all of those. We're just going to get one of the best of all of those thousands of people who wrote something. Okay? And then what do we have? We have a book, you know, a good book, a respected book, you know, a deep book, right? To Kill a Mockingbird. And then we get the book and we want to read it like in 3 weeks, all right, or 4 weeks. So we want to get the language, the work, the imagination content there, all in 2 weeks, you know. I think we are thinking too much of ourselves, you know. You know my point? So we get a life's work, and then we think we can absorb all of that in, I don't know, just one reading, okay? So that's the point why I think we must work very hard to get to this person's level, even to not even to write something, but just to understand this person, all right? Because this book concentrates all of that life, okay? That's why when you find a very good book, it's worth reading and rereading and rereading, okay? And as a matter of fact, I agree. I advise you from time to time to get, you know, the parts of the book by yourself, reread, see if you can remember the videos, right? This is a painstaking job, right? But it's a very rewarding job, all right? Okay, so let's go. Video 16, just a little review. A Negro would not pass the Radley place at night. He would cut across to the sidewalk opposite and whistle as he walked. Why would the Negro do that? If you can answer to yourself, that's very nice. If not, you should go back to video 16. The Maycomb school grounds adjoined the back of the Radley lot. Again, if you know what is adjoined and Radley lot there, you are fine. From the Radley chicken yard, tall pecan trees shook their fruit into the schoolyard, but the nuts lay untouched by the children. Radley pecans would kill you. If you can picture the image, you know, and if you can remember pecan, that's nice, you're doing fine. Otherwise, you're doing fine as well. You just have to go back And that's the normal process. I had to go back, many times in order to get the picture in my mind. A baseball hit into the Radley yard was a lost ball and no questions asked. The mystery of that house began many years before Jim and I were born. The Radleys, welcome anywhere in town, kept to themselves, a predilection unforgivable in Maycomb. They did not go to church, Maycomb's principal recreation, but worshipped at home. Mrs. Radley seldom, if ever, crossed the street for a mid-morning coffee break with her neighbors, and certainly never joined a missionary circle. Mr. Radley walked to town at 11:30 every morning and came back promptly at 12, sometimes carrying a brown paper bag that the neighbors assumed contained the family groceries. I never knew how old Mr. Radley made his living. Jim said he bought cotton, a polite term for doing nothing, but Mr. Radley and his wife had lived there with their 2 sons as long as anybody could remember. I don't know if it's a typo from the edition. I really don't know. I'll check the book. I never knew how old... Oh, sorry. My bad. I never knew how old Mr. Radley, See? The tricky parts I told you. Not how old Mr. Radley. I never knew how old Mr. Radley. Okay, that review is said and done. If you're okay with it, that's nice. If you're not okay, and if you are, let's say, honest with yourself, you should go back to a previous video, or you should reread previous this part again, take a look at Quizlet and etc. Let's go to new ground. The shutters and doors of the Radley house were closed on Sundays. Another thing alien to Maycomb's ways. Closed doors meant illness and cold weather only. Of all days, Sunday was the day for formal afternoon visiting. Ladies wore corsets, men wore coats, children wore shoes. But to climb the Radley front steps and call, "Hey," of a Sunday afternoon was something their neighbors never did. The Radley house had no screen doors. I once asked Atticus if it ever had any. Atticus said yes, but before he was born. Keep in mind, corset. Women used to wear those a lot in the past. It's a kind of girdle, that you put around. I don't think it's going to be a pretty image if I show you in my body. But then your waist is supposed to be, very thin, and then it will bring your bosom, your breasts out, Of course, there is a picture of a corset in the Quizlet. Screen doors, I think we see in the United States very frequently, You have a door, and then you have another door, a screen door, which is made of a very fragile material. It's just to protect, I don't know, from bugs and stuff, right? So you see in movies that a person opens the door, and then you can see the person sometimes when they're suspicious. They talk to you through the screen door, and then they can open the screen door as well. According to the neighborhood legend, when the younger Radley boy was in his teens, he became acquainted with some of the Cunninghams from Old Sarum, an enormous and confusing tribe domiciled in the northern part of the county, and they formed the nearest thing a gang ever seen in Maycomb. They did little but enough to be discussed by the town and publicly warned from 3 pulpits. Keep in mind, where can we find pulpits? We find pulpits in church, right? Pulpit is the place the preacher is, to preach to the congregation. So if this little gang formed by the younger Radley and the Cunninghams from, this confusing tribe. So I don't know, what do you think? Maybe they are gypsies? I don't know. Maybe it's a pejorative way of calling, a confused town. What do you think? Please tell me. So they formed this little gang, and then the town would discuss that, and of course the preachers in the church, the fathers. I don't think there would be Catholic priests there, but the pastors, they would talk about this youth of nowadays that doesn't know the Lord, and ruin our peace and the peace of the town, things like that. Okay, so, and then we have colon, right? So that shows that we are going to get to know now what is the warning people received from the 3 pulpits of town. They hung around the barber shop. They rode the bus to Abbottsville on Sundays and went to the picture show, to the movies picture show, remember? They attended dances at the county's riverside gambling hell, the Dewdrop Inn and fishing camp. They experimented with stumphole whiskey. Nobody in Maycomb had ever had nerve enough to tell Mr. Radley that his son was in with the wrong crowd. Let me give you stumphole whiskey. Well, literally speaking, stumphole whiskey is, take a look, I have the definition here. Whiskey illegally made and sold, then hidden in tree stumps. Imagine you cut down a tree, all right? You have the big log, you cut down a tree, then you have a stump here, what is left from this log. So the illegal whiskey, keep in mind, at this time, if I'm not wrong, at this time alcoholic drinks were prohibited, right? So people would hide the whiskey they made in the stumps of trees. That's why they used to call it stumphole whiskey. A hole in the stump and the whiskey was there. So they rode the bus to Abbottsville on Sundays, and okay, they experimented with stumphole whiskey. Nobody in Maycomb had the nerve enough to tell Mr. Radley that his boy was in with the wrong crowd. Remember, crowd, of course, we can use to talk about, a big group of people, but crowd sounds as gang. Be careful with gang. My gang can be my group of friends, but of course, because of the gangs that are bad and break stuff and etc., we associate with juvenile delinquents and things like that, or even something more serious. But remember that the term in English is somewhat broader. For example, when Turma da Mônica was translated to English, at first they translated as Monica's gang, right? So Monica's gang is not like Monica, she has a baseball bat, and they go to places and start breaking stuff and etc., right? Later on, and of course the idea was not only to sell Monica's gang outside, United States or whatever, but to sell to Brazilians, so people who practice English and etc. Later on they changed the name because it had a wrong ring to it, and now I think the translation is Monica and Friends, much more friendly for a Brazilian ear, right? but keep in mind the term is broader in English. Okay, so we have gang and then we have a crowd. Okay, so my crowd and I went there and etc. So we're talking about the friends that go together and do things together, and many times they do wrong things together.